We have an electric fence that I ran here, and you can really see well the difference on that side as opposed to this side. We ran this electric fence for like 5 years and grazed this lightly, and last year was the first year in 15 that we actually cut this little section right here to the east of this electric fence for hay. And it's improved quite a bit, so that on this side we got a totally different thing. This is where most of my attention has been as far as improvement. And the method of improvement that we're talking about, and just about every alfalfa plant you see out here came out of my hand into this ground. And it's not done all at once. It's done like this. That thing right there, come in here, you start drawing lines. Now when it's wetter earlier in the spring, and that's the disruption you have. You put that in the ground, you disrupt it a little bit, you put your alfalfa seed in, you step it down like that, you pack it in, and you get alfalfa plants. Sometimes you get really great rows. Sometimes you get just a few plants here and there. But the thing is over the long run, and we've been working on this alfalfa field for about 8 years now, and we've got to the point up there on the slope where we've got just really, really wonderful alfalfa stands. And I've been working this way with it, so some of this, and I'll think if I can find some, I'll show you what a one-year-old plant looks like in this setting. But it just takes time, and it just takes continued effort. And it doesn't have to be grueling. What I do when I come with my 50 pounds of seed every year, that's what I kind of allotted. One year I did 100 pounds, is I'll limit myself in the morning to about an hour and a half. That's all I can stand, that's all I want to do. But then over time, I get that whole 50 pounds or 100 pounds on the ground. And it really improves what is actually happening out here on the ground.
So Mark, does it do any good to ever let the alfalfa go to seed?
Well, that's the good thing about it, is occasionally we have some good summer rains after haying. And then you get the second regrowth and the second bloom. And that's why we have the bees. See those bee hives over there?
Oh yeah.
And they come in here, and bees do pollinate alfalfa. And the beekeeper loves it. We're on organic ground. He doesn't have to worry about the chemicals and all the problems that come with the modern ag. And we've got 3 different areas where we have him place those bees. And I would encourage people, if you don't have bees on your place, to get bees on your place. Well, how do I get bees on my place? Well, you got to see if you can come up with a local apiary and just go talk to them about how can I get bees on my place. Hey, it's organic. I got a place where you can easy access right off the road, and you won't have to deal with that. So the bees really help, and so yeah, pollinate, and then they'll go to seed as well. And in fact, over here, I'll show you where the bees have done just as much work as I could ever do as far as dropping that seed. Because what we have here in this field is we have irrigation that runs up most of the way on that high ground, and then we flood irrigate that way. I have had flood irrigation onto this part of the field at one time, but I found it caused me to flood it in other places. So there's a balance that you have to come with, and then however the rains come is a big deal. Our friend Jess Algers always want to say, before you do anything, check the rain gauge, because in this part of Montana it's really important. So we'll go just a little bit further. I'll hopefully show you some one-year-old plants that I know are one-year-old plants, because they'll be in a nice little row about 6 feet long, and we can just see as we go this way, you're going to say, God, it's improving. Well, it really is improving, but that had attention 5 years ago, and this has had it in the last 2 or 3. So it's a long-term thing, right? And I've been doing this for about 8 years is all.
What kind of soil type do you have through here?
The soil in here, now this is an interesting thing, because whatever I say here applies to a desiccated sandstone soil. This is really sandy soil. And what we don't have, that a lot of Montana has, we don't have rocks.
Oh.
I mean, we don't have rocks. I mean, there's just no rocks, and it's this desiccated low sandstone hills that over the years have broken down. So it gives you no rocks, but it also drains really quickly.
Right.
But it is mineralized very heavily. One of the advantages we have here, because of that, I think this was an old lake bed at some time, we don't have selenium deficiency in the soil.
Right.
So I don't have to worry about selenium. I do have copper deficiency.
Do you?
So, you know, you got to think about copper.
So it looks like it's pretty, no loam really, is there?
Not a lot of loam at all. So there's that, and then we'll have some heavier soils as well that really can end up being, you know, thin type, really wet soil. We can show you some of that over there as well. So let's just take a really quick walk out here and just kind of notice as we go. I might point out some things as we go as well.
Who's your apiary?
Drange apiary out of Laurel. Laurel, Andy Drange is his name. And he partners, incidentally, with a guy out of Idaho. And his name's Steele. And how that partnership works is really cool. You know, personal relationships in whatever business you're in are so key. Andy Drange lives in Laurel and has his bee operation centered out of Laurel. Montana's the second leading producer of honey in the country because of summers just like this. And so what does he do with those in the winter? He takes them to Idaho, to Steele's place, and puts them in an old potato cellar and keeps the temperature at 42 degrees, pumps in nitrogen, and makes those bees kind of go dormant until about January. They wake them up and takes them to the almond fields, peaches, and so forth down in California. And then about May 1st, he comes up here. And it's a kind of a big loop that he's built this network of people that he works with to keep his bees and keep the Steele bees as well. So it's a really good thing.
Your tool, did you buy that or make it?
By accident. This is a
shovel. It is a broke shovel.
This is a shovel that I used so much that I broke it because I was digging my irrigation ditch. And eventually it failed. I said, man, I need something that digs the ground real easy that you know, it works, and that works.
Oh yeah.
2 feet, 1 foot, 6 feet at a time. So we'll go ahead and go on out into the field just a little further, and you can kind of notice how it changes. Well, this is 1 year old. I came out here last year with my bag of seed, and this one here, and I drew these lines in the sand with this tool, planted it. You can see other lines here. And over time, this is going to improve this general area. The nitrification of the soil by the alfalfa really helps. And we'll just go a little bit further and keep it in mind that most all these alfalfa plants out here in this area are less than 5 years old. As we go, they're going to start getting 4 and 5 and 6. We won't go too much further.
So do you have a population objective?
Nope.
Just want to sporadically throughout the field.
Yeah, right, because diversity, right? And the thing is you see there's cheatgrass in here occasionally, but you can't afford to rip this up. It'll all turn to weeds no matter what you do. And I never could. I could never afford to tear something up and take it totally out of production, not to mention the interruption of the soil, the soil biology that's going on down there, right? So I don't have an objective at all.
Do you find if you've got the native and the mixed with the alfalfa, does that do anything to trap the spread of the cheatgrass seed or cover it?
I think as long as you have these, I've got a lot of crested wheatgrass in here. There is some Basinski's wild rye, like this plant right here, in here. And I inherited that, right? So I had to come in when we bought this place. You just work with what you have when you didn't get to select it in the first place. So 2 years ago I planted some sandfoin in here. It's hard to find a sandfoin plant. It doesn't do well competing against these things. It doesn't. Its roots just don't do it. So, you know, you kind of start where you are and just work over time to improve it, right? And so we'll just go a little bit further and you'll see what I mean. Yeah, we do have some alfalfa weevil going on in here, but we don't have very much longer before we're gonna cut. I see the buds are starting on the ends of plants. But you can see here the difference between the youngest stuff where I've been improving it and how it really ends up. So that as we go up there closer to where I actually get water on an irrigated basis, it's even another magnitude better than this. But this is not the way it started. And most all of this alfalfa that you see is in fact been planted by me or by the bees pollinating when we didn't cut a second cutting on it, right? It just flowered and then went to seed. So it's a really big, I was looking for my first line that I put in out here. It was about 100 yards long, and there was a gap that the seeder missed about 2 feet wide. I said, I'm going to put some in there and see what it did. This is about 8 years ago. And it took off really well, so I said, I got it. So that's what I started doing. And you can see how, limit yourself to an hour and a half so it doesn't drive you crazy. Just figure out that you're going to put in about, 5 pounds a day, and you got 10 of those to go through your bag, and then you're done. We like it earlier in the spring when there's a lot more moisture in the soil and those young roots have a chance to actually take hold. But it's just so much, it's just amazing how the improvement over time in this method has helped.
This is strictly for hay. You don't graze it, or you do graze
I graze it.
as well?
I graze it too. After hay, hopefully we get some late summer rains. It'll come in a little bit. I'll winter graze it is all I'll ever do.
What kind of alfalfa have you been using?
Shaw. Exclusively Shaws, because I didn't want to get in the situation where if it got really bad, I'd have to replant it. Because Shaw is extremely tough. It was made Montana State University, and it's resilient here in Montana. It's made for Montana, bred for Montana. So that's what I look for. I can't get any organic yet, but there's an exception if you can't find the seed you need
Right.
to be able to do an organic. The other thing we do out here is we don't clear cut this for hay. We don't do that. We will come in here and leave, and I'll see if I can see one that we left last year and kind of try to point it out to you. But we'll leave 6, 10, 12-foot spaces the whole run uncut. That is a little thought that I had as far as soil development and as far as ecology goes. I call it SSOS because the field had an SOS going up. So I added an S to it and said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to leave some strips and not cut it for hay and just leave it standing. That's going to do a few things. One, it's going to produce seed for sure. And the seed's going to be able to go onto that particular strip in that year. It's going to, when this all goes dormant, if it didn't get cut, it's going to leave shade on the surrounding area of the soil. Now, it isn't complete shade everywhere, but it's shade. And that's going to then, conserve whatever water we do get. Once it dies and the skeleton is standing there, it's going to add organic matter to the soil. And while that strip is here, and I typically do them in a north-south because we get east-west wind, it's going to gather snow. And it gathers snow like no tomorrow. And then come out here, everything else will be melted off, but not on those strips that are uncut. So taking every square inch of hay that you can possibly get makes no sense in the long run and helps you in the short run because now you have those strips to graze, as I mentioned. And it's not a lot of strips that I create out here, but it's a few. And it's in a different place every year. So it's more balanced, it's rotational, it's wholesome. It's just a longer look at it.
Keeps the pollinators going too.
Keeps the pollinators going too. So it's an ecological thing not to clear cut your hayfield.
You see things like bird populations or anything else taking advantage of those kind of edges?
I think that the pheasants do a lot of that, and certainly snakes and things will use that to transport their
Oh,
way.
okay.
So yeah. So I mean, those animals, particularly where the creek's just over that little rise right there, right, when they're going between places that they want to go, and it's just it just adds more balance and more ecology back into
Sure.
the organic system plan. And then you get things like in the distance there, you can see a little cottonwood tree came in here, so I'm letting that grow up there. No reason to cut it down. Cut around it, it's no big deal. Anything you can do to allow nature to be nature instead of this mentality that says we got to control everything, that this hyper efficiency model says we got to control. You got to have some flexibility in what you do. So if we went further yet, it'd get better yet, right? And that's just an idea. So there you go. And here you'll notice we've got to the point now where there is just about no cheatgrass whatsoever. It just can't compete when you got big roots like this. When we get back to the ATVs, I got one more little spiel, and that is on northern pocket gophers. Okay? They're the ones that left that big gap over there that was just dirt. They come in here and they dig up. They're the ones that leave the mounds, and there's no hole that's apparent. They're the ones that leave those tunnels underneath the snow. When the snow goes away, there's this neat tunnel. Northern pocket gophers. So I got a spiel for them when we get back to the ATV. Real quick. I have a real love-hate relationship with those pocket gophers that dig up my soil. But here's what this is all about, guys. Those alfalfa plants, this is an alfalfa plant root, a mature plant that's been dug up and taken a photograph of. That's going on all below the soil. And these are the places where alfalfa nodulates nitrogen, puts nodules along the roots, and then they stay there. And they stay there until the plant dies, or pocket gopher comes along and starts eating on this in the winter. Right there at the soil line, kills the plant. But it's a big old giant plant like that, and all that root goes into the soil, and all that nodulation then gets released. And that's what's happening, you see, as we progressed out into that field. Is more and more and more of those alfalfa plants have got killed by pocket gophers or any other thing, and the nodulation nitrogen is going into the soil along with all that carbon, all that root matter as well. That's building the soil. And that's my love-hate relationship with pocket gophers. I hate them until I do something like today and see what they do for you actually.
And as you would then immediately, as the ecologist, you'd say, where are the predators?
Well,
then you'd say, oh,
good
that's
question.
some wolves. So then we'll...
Good question. Weasels. I see weasels out here. Bull snakes, 5-footers.
Yep.
That's all you can do. Occasional rattlesnake. I don't worry about them, and I certainly don't hate snakes.
So over the years, have you seen population up and down of these gophers?
Nope, I've seen them.
More of a rise? Or?
I've seen a rise, and now they seem like they're stable, and I kind of like that stability. But I think they would be vulnerable if they got too dense to plague and other flea-borne kind of things that would kill them. They're funky little critters, right? About that big, little beady eyes and a little tiny tail, and they can dig. They're just muscle, right? They push all that dirt up, and they make those blank spots. So when I'm doing my seeding, a lot of times, there'll be one, and I'll just seed the heck out of it. And it's a great place because it's a good host.
So is the pocket gopher, is that different from the Richardson ground squirrel?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
The pocket gopher is, in fact, well, I described him in that he's the one that leaves a mound and there's no hole. It's obvious.
Okay.
The Richardson ground squirrel leaves a hole and a mound. This would be a Richardson ground squirrel right here. And so there is a difference. These aren't a problem. They can become a problem, but these are a lot easier to control than pocket gophers.